Another week, another week in HBAR, Hashgraph, Hedera, and all that good stuff. We're talking about bubbles, breadcrumbs, and billions today. I'm back. I'm back in the swing of it. If folks have been keeping up with me on Twitter, I had a cold for a little bit there. I also took last week off of the news because I had family stuff for Easter and all that good stuff. I'm back, and there's a lot going on. I wanted to have the kind of mega news thread posted yesterday, but it was so crazy. I was having some conversations with people. I was reading some of the news, and I was popping onto the subreddit, and there was kind of like even more things that have kind of transpired. So it's so funny. I'll get the mega news thread together for the week, and usually there's more things to add. It feels like sometimes leading right up to the show, and then sometimes I'll finish the show. I think this actually happened to me the last episode that I did, episode 71, that was 2 weeks ago. I finished the show, and I think during the show, one of the stories we're going to talk about today was published. Things are kind of happening really quickly, but it feels good. And I mean, last time I was talking with you guys in my office here, I was looking out the window and there was snow. There was probably at least 3 feet of snow, 4 feet of snow in some cases here in Canada. Now there's no snow. It's sunny. I was walking around in a t-shirt. Things are changing. I can sense it in the people. I can sense it in myself, and I can sense it when I look outside my window. It's a new, it's just new vibes. It's fresh vibes. But also, I think that there's new light being shed on certain areas of the ecosystem. We're talking about bubbles and stuff. Some interesting conversations this week for me. And also interesting conversations in the community. Really culminating in some really fascinating article from community member Parabolic HBAR. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about all that good stuff. But we're live on Twitter Spaces with another week in Hashgraph to unpack. Let's take a quick look at what we have going on. So this week, bubbles, breadcrumbs, and billions. We're going to talk about that article. We're going to talk about some Hashpack news. We're going to talk about some NFT NYC news. We actually have someone listening, AngryPenguins, who's in New York right now, who I'm going to have come up a bit later in the show to chat a little bit about what exactly is going on over there. We're going to have him live on the scene. We're talking about IBM stuff, community nodes, Dovu, Microsoft, MetaMask, Governing Council meeting minutes, coupons, Fido Alliance. We're going to talk about a little AI story that's interesting, but kind of like whatever. We'll talk about it. I mean, at this point, it's going to be hard to find a Twitter Spaces where someone isn't talking about AI at some point, to be honest, guys. So get used to it. We're going to talk about hardware wallets. I think that Ledger is being given a run for their money. I'll tell you that. Saucer Swap, and some other cool stuff. So got a lot to talk about. If you want to catch up on previous episodes, you can head over to itsbrandond.com/HBAR where you'll find the past episodes. And so I wanted to just dive into it before we kind of start unpacking the news with this article that's on everyone's mind today. But first, good evening from Ottawa, Canada, everyone. My name is Brandon Davenport, and I'm a developer, artist, and creative agency owner at Dirksen & Davenport Incorporated. And like all of you, I'm a Hashgraph enthusiast. It's April 16th, and we've got a lot to talk about. Welcome to Hashgraph News and Rumours, episode 72. This is a weekly show that covers the top stories related to Hedera, HBAR, and everything in between. broadcast live on Twitter Spaces every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Sorry, I missed a week. I'm already rusty. My God, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on Sundays, and made available on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts every Monday. Get the info you need about the show and listen to past episodes at itsbrandond.com/HBAR. If you're listening live, check out the Twitter thread pinned to the top of the Spaces. I forgot to do that too. I'm losing it, guys. I'm absolutely losing it. I miss a week and look what happens. Did this work? Hold on. Did it work? Perfect. There we go. Beautiful. If you're listening live, check the Twitter thread pinned to the top of the Spaces. Take a deeper dive into each story. And to everybody listening right now, take a moment to share the Spaces to let your friends know you're listening. The more the merrier. You can click the little comment button at the bottom right of the Spaces to ask a question or share something interesting that listeners might like to know, and I'll talk about it. Also, a reminder to join the Hashgraph Enthusiast Twitter community. I think it's over 800 people now. It's awesome. I love seeing people post in there. It's a great resource. And I'll mention it a little bit later. It kind of comes into play a little bit later in the show if I remember. Also, the show continues to grow from hundreds of listeners to thousands, and that's because of people like you. I mean, it's just so incredible to see everyone listening every week. If you're interested in becoming a supporter of the show, please consider making an HBAR donation. It helps me continually add value to the Hashgraph community and keeps the show ad-free. You can send a donation to enthusiast.hbar using your Hedera wallet. Brought to you by viewers like you. That was a little rough, but I'll get the intro next week. This was a practice run after a week away. Bubbles. So I've been having a lot of conversations with people in the Hedera ecosystem, and there is a really interesting topic of conversation that I think has been happening for a long time. And the best analogy I can give is this, right now we've got an organization, right? A technology startup unicorn, a technology marvel, Hedera, that wants to be the 100-year organization. And they're in a market that thinks minute to minute. So there's kind of a mismatch, and there's been a bit of tension between the ways in which Hedera goes about things, some of their deficiencies as an organization, and then some of the ways that the growing community has learned maybe better approaches. And there's been some of that tension, and there's a lot of ideas going around, and I've had so many amazing conversations with so many people about this. And yesterday, there was an article published by a community member that a lot of people love, known as Sivo, aka Parabolic HBAR. He sent me a draft of it earlier that day. I thought it was really smart. The way that I thought of it was, this article is to gold bugs and HBAR maxis what the Mike Maloney Secrets of Money videos were to crypto degens. And I think that articles like this start an important conversation. I hope that Hedera and Swirlds and those folks are receptive to it and kind of head into it head on. But I brought up King Solomon here just because what we're really talking about is cross-chain, tearing down silos, getting out of bubbles. The key criticism here is Hedera and HBARbarians are kind of in a bubble, and a lot of the critical dApps like Saucer Swap, Hashpack, all these different types of things, they're working so hard to bring outside liquidity in to bridge some of these conversations cross-chain. And I mean, you're doing a huge element of that. Did you get a chance to read this article? And I'm curious to hear kind of your thoughts on it, or just this general idea of Hedera maybe not hitting the mark on being a little more cross-chain, getting outside of the HBAR bubble. I'm really curious.
No, I didn't read the article. I mean, I did not have time to read the article, but I think I got a good synopsis. probably from you. And yeah, these spaces you do every Sunday, I don't even remember the last time I was able to hop into one. Probably 3 months ago. But what you're doing with this consistent weekly drive towards a recap and news and everything, it's something that nobody else, at least in my opinion, nobody else is doing from an organic level. This is something that is a very much so a passion aspect to you. So anybody that's down there listening to right now, if you haven't ever heard Brandon's podcast that he does every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, it is 100% the most valuable, quick weekly recap that you will ever get regarding Hedera, without the fluff, without the nonsense, without the bullshit. Touch base on cross-chain aspects. You mentioned, is Hedera not doing a good job? I don't think Hedera is incentivized to spread anything besides utility within the network and the network growth. So it comes down to the community and people building on the network. I think a lot of what we see right now is a lot of people launching their own NFT projects, and kudos to everybody that has the balls or badges or whatever you may have to do it. It takes a massive amount of guts to be able to launch your own thing in this space. But coming at it from that agnostic standpoint and really trying to break down barriers, I think is a much different animal. And I think that really is where a lot of the success lies, because look, we know from being in Hedera and the HBAR ecosystem for years and years at this point in time how much utility is here. But even like DeFi aspects like Saucer Swap, X, Y, and Z, it's hard for them to showcase the utility if nobody knows that utility exists. And then it has to be really organic just to open those conversations up with people across ecosystems and chains. And the only way to do that, I think, is trying to be as agnostic as possible, trying to allow people to speak and getting these people in the same conversation so that the communities down there listening understand, oh shit, maybe there's some utility and value over here that I want to utilize. So
I think
that's probably rambling.
No, that really hits the nail on the head. And I mean, from this, and I just really appreciate the kind words. And I mean, likewise to yourself, if people don't follow along with King Solomon at all, I mean, most of you do. I'd be surprised if he needs any introduction. But with Genfinity and talking about organic and consistency and all those different types of things, I mean, you're doing like huge scale stuff. It's just incredible. And what I'm doing more is speaking to the Hedera crowd, but what you're doing is really directly addressing a lot of the things highlighted in this article. When you get a chance to read it, I encourage you to read it. But I mean, a couple key points from this article that I find really interesting is there's a big focus on, of course, attracting people from outside Hedera into Hedera. Of course, that's important. But I think there's also another element of the Hedera community and kind of the origins of it and the germ that it kind of grew from is really like gold bugs, right? People that that are really big gold, silver investors, precious metals, and people that are really focused on Hedera from a technology standpoint. Like, we arguably have one of the most energized, really sweet, and knowledgeable communities. But the problem is that I don't think there's maybe an appreciation for some of the other networks out there, because it comes from a standpoint of this is a hash graph and then there's everything else. And also too, a lot of these, gold and silver and precious metal enthusiasts, HBAR was appealing, Bitcoin is maybe appealing, but they're not really willing to venture out. They're not buying and selling Hedera NFTs. They're not participating in DeFi. And a lot of those we would consider the whales in the ecosystem. So it's kind of like this weird situation we've seen all the upsides as to why this community is so great. But now that it's grown, we're realizing that kind of like the OGs, the people that really pull the weight in this community, also kind of have to adapt and grow. And that includes Hedera, Swirlds, the HBAR Foundation, the Governing Council. But you're also right, dude, where, to play devil's advocate, if you invested in Hedera a couple of years ago, you were investing in an enterprise organization focused on enterprise, right? There was an enterprise focused investment. If you're doing that now, You're still doing that. 10 years from now, you're
Yeah,
probably
I mean,
still doing that.
see, I will disagree with that just because, like, 100%, like 3 or 4 years ago, like looking at Hedera in, oh shit, I don't even remember the first time I did a Christian interview. It was probably, I think it was 2021 or maybe it was 2020. I think it's been amazing to see, and this is what it's going to take for people to take notice of Hedera, because it's one of the faults of what happens in the XRP community all the time, is that it's like people are investing in fucking XRP because of Ripple, which is the totally wrong mindset to invest in any digital asset ever. Like, you should be looking at these digital assets in a way where, what is the network value and how many people are building on the network, and what UX and UI or user experience aspects for not only devs but for the community to come on and play in these ecosystems is massive. I mean, that's what Ethereum did. That's basically all that Ethereum did. I mean, since 2015, they pivoted and went directly towards the smart contracts and dApp development aspect. And they've done it for 7-8 years at this point in time. So they have an 8-year head start, essentially. But they also had a 7-year portion of time where people were being murdered by fees. So the adoption aspects kind of go there. So if you look at Hedera right now, I think it's amazing to see that, like, not only do we have like Hashpack, which you have people from multiple ecosystems saying that Hashpack is one of the most seamless experiences, but multiple wallets, multiple exchanges, multiple dexes. I think a lot of it comes down to ebbs and flows of the market as a whole. Like, Bitcoin's running a little bit now. You see some shit coins running, and people are like, well, why isn't Hedera 40x out of a bear market? And I think a lot of these people that are, you know, like you yourself, Brandon, doing these videos, I mean, and these podcasts and everything are super valuable. And it just needs to be, look, I don't want, you know, there's the association, there's the foundation. Those things are to promote and incentivize growth. But Hedera themselves, I mean, they're just going to watch this thing unfold. And if you and I could both probably agree with this, if you looked at the growth from like developers and network builders in the past 3 years on Hedera, and look at all the other networks out there, I'd be like, dude, it's an amazing achievement for how much growth has occurred.
Oh, 100%. And I think that, from reading this article, and I'll go into a few other points about it, but well, actually, I can highlight a couple things. So some just for some more context for folks listening that maybe haven't had a chance to read the article. This article, again, from Parabolic HBAR, addresses some of these pain points and deficiencies that are viewed in the ecosystem, again, through the lens of the crypto community, right? It's a younger audience. It doesn't align completely with the existing kind of, again, like OG Hedera investors. We're hopefully going to start to see things bridging a little more. And those things are happening, again, because of some of the initiatives that are, I think the ball is already rolling. We just want to see that happen more. And some of the points in this are, there has been a decline in social engagement with Hedera, but I mean, again, there's so many different factors that you just can't control with the market. But definitely something to look an eye at. Also, when we look at in regards to token price and TPS, I think that we often talk about TPS being the most important metric for this community, and we're looking to it as the indicator of growth, the indicator of success. But it's a little bit of a confirmation bias, because the external crypto community not only isn't excited about it, but they're confused, and it doesn't seem like the metric is landing for the broader ecosystem. Of course, it's really galvanizing the community. It's checking a box. I'm excited about it. I understand why it's important. But trying to broaden Hedera's reach and grab the interest of more people in the broader crypto ecosystem, is TPS the way to go? Like, from what I've been seeing is people don't really understand it, or they just put it in the basket with Solana,
TPS is, I mean, I think what has been misrepresented is like real TPS. So like transactions per second, we all know that XRPL can do, well, there was graphics for 15,000, but it's like 2,500, whatever Joel or David Schwartz said a couple of days ago. But that's even still like, it's like, okay, just because I can blend, 40 eggs in 10 minutes doesn't mean that I need to blend 40 when I only need 2 to eat. I think real TPS and what's really occurring on Hedera with the consensus service is much more interesting, which has been misrepresented, which probably doesn't get enough traction as it should, because all that shit's, actually flowing through Hedera. I mean, it's the same question you could ask with Ethereum and TVL, so total value locked, and like how much money is wrapped up in Ethereum. It's a bullshit metric because a lot of that money is in projects that failed. People don't have any liquidity anymore, X, Y, and Z. I think that like the total assets tokenized and like moving everything like into these ecosystems is going to be a much more interesting metric. So, and that starts with like, we saw a huge uptick in Hedera consensus service transactions and transactions per second, up to the point that we're now like obviously representing 1 billion transactions plus monthly. Most of those probably flowing through consensus service. And that was from a real world use case. So Atma.io and their RFID aspects through Avery Dennison and all that shit. Billions of products connected in the cloud. I mean, that to me, I think at some point, Brandon, I think for me, we're going to, like, that's one thing. Wait until the next one goes live. And I'm glad that there were some hiccups over the past 3 or 4 months, because then hopefully we can move on and get to like, 5 to 7 billion transactions per month. At some point, it becomes inexcusable for people to not pay attention. And hopefully the network is ready for that type of onslaught of like, this can actually facilitate it. There's so many services here. It's really unique to my individual needs. That's another thing a lot of people don't fucking talk about with Hedera, is that if you are a developer or a project looking to launch, like Ethereum, like with smart contracts and Turing complete aspects, it's like you're just basically taking you're going full R word, like in Tropic Thunder. It's like, why would I ever do that? Whenever maybe I just want to launch a token or just launch a product and use consensus or file sharing or whatever it may be. There's so many products that you can utilize, and there's so many resources, and the community is so great over here. So, and I think that there's been a lot of growth recently. I think we're just beginning to see, because there's trials and tribulations throughout all these networks. I'm really excited for HBAR and the HBAR ecosystem throughout this cycle, hopefully.
Boop. Cut. You're just listening to the episode now. I'm actually sitting here editing it for the podcast platforms now. There was a part right here where King Solomon and I were talking about the mirror nodes on Hedera and, them being a potential bottleneck. After the show went live, some folks reached out to me, and in this conversation, I just basically gapped on some info. So there's only one public node on Hedera, and there's actually 2 really great and affordable solutions for mirror nodes on Hedera that I think people should know more about, that could help with some of the things talked about in this article. One of those is Hashgraph.io, which is a mirror node provider from Patches at Turtle Moon Command Center. And also another one is Archaea, which is again from the folks at, I think it's Jesse at Hashport. It's his thing as well. So really great community service. If you need mirror node stuff, check those 2 out. My conversation on this topic with King Solomon, I've just cut out of the episode just because it wasn't really accurate or relevant information. And it's just, I wanted to save you a little bit of time. So without further ado, back to the episode. Boop. This is the thing, is there's so many different areas we have to grow. There's also the enterprise side. And I think to wrap up my thoughts on this, because I want to move over to a conversation around NFT NYC, because I'm going to bring somebody up who's there. But I think my thoughts on this article from Parabolic HBAR, just on this topic in general, is I want to look to the optimistic side of this. Is I can agree and understand from Hedera's standpoint and from Swirl's standpoint that at the beginning when they were booting up this public network, if there was even a whiff of them talking about or publicly speaking on, or probably even bringing up in private meetings, DeFi, NFTs, those different types of things, PFP projects, those original governing council members, it probably would have been near impossible or much more difficult to onboard them. They probably had to change their pitch entirely to them.
Well, I think they did. And they did that through, they sold it through, hey, we're going to open source the code. And that is 100% what happened, which was really smart. That was like the one really smart thing that I think occurred, where it was like, let's open source it. We still have the governing council, X, Y, and Z through the enterprise aspect, but open sourcing that code opens up so many doors. And I was actually surprised when I saw that announcement. I was like, this is really smart. And but a lot of other people, you know, everybody else has done it. Now it's just dependent upon, you know, people building with it. And there's a lot of people building with it, but it's like, it's not just building. It's not just being like, okay, I'm going to do this and just, you know, release NFTs or release a coin project or use HBAR. It's like, how can you participate in growing and expanding out the network? Like the network itself, like the Hashgraph, like grow out the mirror node aspects, grow out all the aspects that you're talking about. And that is the real question. That's what a lot of the Ethereum shit happened through incentivization, which is fucking crazy because it was all proof of work and now it's proof of stake. And it's like, it's a much different animal when you deal in consensus and try to decentralize, you know, the consensus. Well, we know obviously Hedera is like proof of stake to an extent as well, but a little bit different. So there's a lot to unwrap there, dude. But I think it is going to have to come down to further decentralization over time in a way that makes sense for the community. And there's got to be somebody's going to come out with a business use case around furthering out decentralization within Hedera. I mean, that's a brilliant business use case. If you nail that down from the NFT or the token or the coin purview and you make it make sense, I mean, who wouldn't fucking buy into that? You know, supporting a network, an ecosystem. We haven't seen that yet, but I think it's going to happen. So it just comes down to how early we still are. And I don't think we're that early, but we're still pretty fucking early.
100%. And I think that, you know, to wrap up my thoughts on this is those same people that were the early governing council members, right? And if you want to talk about incentive, those early people that may have been scared off completely by topics such as, again, like NFTs, DeFi, all those different types of things. They're now have for years have been running this network. They own this network. They are Hedera. And so we, looking at this optimistically, we have seen Hedera start to share memes. We've seen them start to celebrate and champion more of this kind of quote unquote fun, degen kind of stuff, NFTs, all these different types of things. Who is making these decisions to pivot the brand, the key messaging and the marketing? Because there has been over the last year or two, a very substantial pivot that you can notice even just scrolling through the Twitter feed. Who's making those decisions? Those same people that would have run the opposite direction previously. So what this shows to me is also the governing council themselves are maybe kind of being a little more receptive to what the community wants than we think. And I think that articles like this and keeping the conversation going and continually elevating it and expanding the minds of, as we were talking about, the precious metal guys and the HBAR maxis, is we're going to just continue this path. We're on the right path. We're headed more in the direction we want to go. So I'm just happy to see initiatives like this and conversations like this.
Dude, I think whoever's running the Hedera account from the social media standpoint probably deserves a fucking raise over the past 2 to 3 months. Because some of those tweets, like literally, I was just like, wow, these are like awesome tweets. Like, and there was tons of engagement and excitement around it and everything else. And some of the tweets were like super ballsy, where it was like, these are some pretty brash tweets. Dude, and we never saw that before. Like that just started what, like 10 weeks ago. I think like I've seen your replies underneath it, which is like, this is making me feel real hot right now. Or some random replies that you have like underneath those tweets.
It's great. It's fun. Like there is an element of culture to this. They want to start appealing to millennials and younger people, and like they have to change. And I think that it's not Hedera making these decisions. It's the governing council that I feel have changed. They've learned more about crypto. They've understood that if you really champion the culture and champion the community and reflect them back at themselves, it's just going to create a flywheel, that network effect.
Dude, you have to say, and I have to hop in 2 minutes, but real quick, I just wanted to say, I think a lot of this comes down to people like you doing these Twitter spaces, people like Fat Boy and Hot Dog and those guys doing their Twitter spaces, and Elizabeth doing the Hello Future stuff, and Brandon from the HBAR Bull doing the videos, and the HBAR Foundation spaces, and just everybody trying to, like, you know, do some decent talks around what's actually going on within these networks. And that's what's really fun and amazing for me is, like, nobody was ever, like, necessarily, like, told to do any of that shit. Like, HBAR does their own, like, Hedera does their own shit. You know, the foundation is their own arm. But, like, as far as, like, me personally, like, I was talking about HBAR 4 fucking years ago. And from the Genfinity purview, yeah, we are happy to be supported by Hedera and Swirls. But that wasn't like, they like, there was no, like, reach out being like, hey, let's do this. It was like, it's like these really organic initiatives coming from communities, putting together bigger events, putting together these consistent interviews. And I mean,
you want to know what that is? That's decentralization.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what you should be doing. I mean, people that are listening to this, you know, these spaces shouldn't be thinking about how they're going to release, you know, and I know, Brandon, you have Pixel Rugs, and it's fucking amazing because I know you're an innovator, and I watch your videos, and I'm like, this is really cool to watch. But a lot of NFT projects, or some NFT projects that I see, are just like, here's a picture of a cat, you know, holding a purse, wearing a top hat. And it's like, okay, like that's fucking awesome. But I mean, it's just amazing to see all the builders and innovators, dude. Like, and I do agree. Like, people can make so many business models in this space, and try to really build out and just support networks or ecosystems. And if you start just doing it, just doing the work. So I've seen your spaces, dude. You had a space a month ago that had like 2,000 people in it. And I was like, shit. And Brandon's been doing this. You've been doing this forever. I mean, that's an amazing accomplishment. Literally saying that you're doing it by yourself. You don't have a team. You've been doing this by yourself with these spaces. That's an amazing accomplishment.
I really appreciate that. I mean, I started these back in October 2021 on Clubhouse before Twitter Spaces even existed. And I started them because I realized I was invested in an asset and an ecosystem that was going to get so big, and I just would do what I naturally do, which is kind of fall out of pace with all of the things that are happening and keeping up with all the news, because life is busy. And that's one of the worst things you can do with a major position in your portfolio. So I thought, if I can do a show, it's going to force me to be accountable and keep up with the news, because I don't want to sound like an idiot to, you know, thousands of people listening. So that's why I did it, and I love it. And you know, I honestly, it's kind of selfish, but I do these spaces for me because it forces me to continue learning, growing, connecting with people. And what I get out of it is I've met some of the best people. I mean, I've met you. We've had great conversations. I've learned so much. So the best piece of advice I can give to people is, like, don't be afraid to be a little selfish. It's like, if it means that people get something cool out of it, so you can kind of like get done what you need done and keep a flow going. It's like, that's what this was for me. And that's where the energy comes from. I get so much out of it, and I hope that, you know, other people get a bunch out of it too.
100%, bro. I know you have an interview here, bro, but I'm happy to hop in. I have not been able to do this for like 2 or 3 months, and you always host such great ones. I'm sorry that you had to pivot for 25 minutes talking to me for this one, but just wanted to give you a shout out, man. There's not many people doing it like you're doing it. And yeah, I will definitely try to check out the interview. And by the way, I'm interviewing you on Monday.
All right, that's right.
I think with Genfinity, which is cool.
That's right. Yeah, tomorrow at some time, I'm on Genfinity, it's going to be really great. I'm talking about music with you that I'm really excited about that.
You talk about whatever you want, bro. You have a 30 or 40-minute time frame to talk about whatever you want, dude. And always excited to talk to you, man. And by the way, Brandon and through Pixel Rugs and everything else, like Brandon was the person when we did Hedera Ween back in October. We were able to create like 5,000 to 7,000 Hedera wallets. Brandon was the dude that I talked to more than anybody that first event that we did last October, and he helped me facilitate a lot of shit. For like 2 weeks straight, I was in conversations for hours with this guy for zero money. He was just like, yeah, hit me up. Happy to support, and he was one of the guys that we definitely depended upon, and same thing with Hash and Times and all that other shit. So, dude, I know where your heart's at. I feel like you know where mine is too. It's always awesome to talk, and looking forward to interviewing you tomorrow as well, bro.
Thanks, man. I don't know if I can handle any more compliments. You're way too kind, and I mean, likewise to you, man. I mean, the support you give into the show. I mean, you're a big reason the show's been growing. So that like what you're hearing right now, everybody, is what happens when you put in the time, you stay consistent, you make some friends, you got a dream, you bring people together. This is the energy we just got to keep going. This is the little engine that makes all these things happen. So
Jesus Christ, dude, I gotta leave now because Solomon is not making fucking dreams come true. Like, I just like the work that you put in, dude. And, I like coming into your shows because you provide so much value. So, right, I am gonna hop off, guys. Okay. In a maze, I see you guys in here as well. So many people all the time. Yeah, Brandon, have a good one, dude. Looking forward to the discussion tomorrow.
Absolutely. All
right, later, bro.
All right, so now we're going to talk about a really big story this week, which is NFT NYC. If people remember, last year was the first time that Hedera and the HBAR NFT community was in New York in person. There's some people from the community there. It was really exciting. It was Hedera's first time there. There was a delightful surprise of different NFTs in the ecosystem, including mine at Times Square on the billboards, and it was a really great feeling. Also, with conversations I had some folks on the show last year about this, and kind of talking about how some of the talks were short and some of the actual event wasn't that great or worth it, but they realized that the peripheral random organic meetups with people that they had met, after the conference and stuff, there was so much value there and everything. And so again, there was that feedback from last year was conference, maybe not the best. Everybody being in the same city, epic, and so many different great hangouts. AngryPenguins, you're up here. I know you're rocking it over there with the community. So I'm really curious to hear from you. What's it like? What's been going on? And what would be really interesting for everyone to know about what's happening at NFT NYC?
No, definitely. I appreciate you having me up. And that description is basically spot on. I would say that you've seen that at the conference of, if you've seen an H, it was like you just seen a unicorn, right? And then you go to an event that they host and everybody's talking about Hedera. They know it. And now it's real conversation about, oh, I've seen you. Oh, I've talked to you. I've heard you talk in a space. And then now you're talking to them about actual stuff that you can do, being that you've kind of already know what Hedera is. And then at the conference, it was almost like you had to start from the ground up and really let them know exactly what it was. So just from that standpoint alone, those side meetings were very valuable, I would say, for sure. And you could definitely see that as well this year with marketing. Last year it was everywhere, and I think it was the hashtags that were a big portion of that. And then this year it was more geared to, hey, check this event out that we're doing outside of NFT NYC that you can RSVP to for free. And then so from there, I think that's the standpoint of get people together that are in this space, that's, talk to each other on spaces or just sit and listen. And now they're in the room with each other. not at a conference, it's kind of a different whole vibe, culture, if you will, because I think you get people relaxed, and you can kind of truly gauge who somebody is. At least, that would be my point of view, on that topic alone.
Yeah, I think being with people, like, it just creates a different wavelength. And that's a great analogy, is like being on spaces with somebody and then like spending time with them probably like just accelerates the conversation so much and just creates a whole new level of energy. I'm really curious, like, um, are there any like cool moments or cool people that jump out at you from your time at the conference so far?
Oh, of course. And see, this is what I was speaking to the other day on the space. It's if you think you're early in Hedera, right? Go to an NFT NYC, and I can assure you, we're a fraction of this space. So what you see out there is there is so much talent. But for me personally, you already know I got to shout out our boy in the maze. I got to meet him, right, and his father. So again, me and Hash Nugs were there, in meeting that type of spot. You already know, so you're not starting from ground zero, right? Like the foundation's there. So then it just clicks. You go. It's like almost as if this has been our friendship and we're just meeting up again and haven't seen each other in years type of deal. So I definitely would say that, because again, he was on stage speaking to where he came from, as how anime started, and that backstory, right? You got it at the conference, okay, which is like we're just talking. It's not the same as these events for Hedera on the side. So everybody else is hearing that, and what is his story tied to? Where does it kind of end up at this point? Not that it's over, but where's it at? And that's Hedera. So that right there was a great thing, because I can assure you there was a lot of speakers, and I can definitely say not that many of their stories end up in Hedera. It just is how it is. So that would be what I'd say. And then personally, just me and my cousin Hash Nugs, being in NFT NYC with our projects, on a personal level, that was definitely like, now we see more and more as we've been trying to go to these events. We've already done a few, and it's just adding on to it. So that'd be kind of it for the personal level.
Okay, awesome. And then I'm gonna move into the news here, and I really appreciate you coming up and sharing some of this stuff. But the real reason I wanted to bring you up is because you're an NFT project. You're there with other Hedera NFT projects. You're there with your cousin. You're and like you said, when you talk about being early, or our community is a little small, or all these different types of things, if you were looking, if there was another NFT project on Hedera, let's say, that was getting started up, and they were asking you, would it be a good idea if we went to NFT NYC or some kind of conference like that? What would you say? Like, do you think it's something that really brings a lot of value to, like a little Hedera NFT? I know you guys have grown a lot, but if there was like a little NFT project, or some kind of startup or another type of project on Hedera that just wanted to kind of check this stuff out, like, is it worth it? Do you have any tips for those folks?
So I think it all depends on what that project would want to have done for them. Because again, if you're talking about, having a booth at NFT NYC alone, let's just, talk numbers, which is factual. The smallest one is about 5,000. So from that aspect alone, you could run into an issue of like your RIO on the back end of, was it worth it of going? I would say yes, just because of the standpoint that, like I said, it was Hedera for me that the Penguin. So I wearing my hat, it locked him in. They say, well, what is that? What chain, whatever, right? And then you go to Hedera, and that's where the curiosity of them not knowing, right? Is where I think you find the value, because then you can lead them to what Hedera is doing on the side, is which these side events. Again, they, some people want to see that there's things happening outside of this event. Like, it's okay to be there and all that. That's great. But what are you doing outside of it? Because like you said, getting all these people in the same city, that's a task in itself. So when you do have that, having it confined to a spot that, you do have to pay to get in, right? It's not a free event. So from that aspect alone, everybody's cognizant of the fact that, you might not be able to. Okay, well, how else can we spread the word? They actually put up to do that and then make it free for you. So I would just say yes, but it really depends on what you want to do, because we are so early. It's not like people see the H and go, oh, yeah, I know I can put faith and value in that. Like I said, you're literally having to tell them what is the H's, what do they stand for? And then that's kind of hard when you're starting from the ground up and then say, hey, well, put your trust and value in dollars into this. When you have that reliability and comfort of knowing a logo, that really helps. And it just isn't there, I would say. But I mean, people were asking, when you see the H's, it's not something they see every day. So they ask about it. But yeah, I would say it really depends on what you want to do.
Right on. Okay. It's worth checking out. And I mean, from my days being in, a rock and roll band and stuff like that and trying to get going in the music scene, if you want people to come to your shows, you've got to go to other people's shows, right? And as you're saying, it's not about maybe what the ROI is exactly. Sometimes it's just about showing up and showing the broader communities in crypto what we want. We want people to show up for us and check us out. So I think that if we have folks like yourself taking it upon themselves to get out there and show up for other people, in my analogy, go to other people's shows, learn about their stuff, show genuine interest, buy into their projects. It's giving those people the gifts that we want to receive. And I think that that's huge. And it ties into what we were talking about at the beginning of the show with the article published by Parabolic HBAR is that's what this is about. So I think it's awesome. I've loved seeing your updates from that and the selfies with everybody in the community. So I think it's great. Before I let you go and move on to the news, was there anything you wanted to shout out or plug or anything that you wanted folks to know?
I will say just appreciate you having me up. And I, from a standpoint of, what you want to see in a community of what you guys are talking about, the board members pivoting and seeing stuff from the community, I think that's what you want. And then, your boy in a maze, you want to talk about what you could put your faith in. That is it. Putting boots to the ground, because that's where some of this stuff gets built. And it's the days after that I think count. And I think you can attest to that as well. You've been doing this how long? Yet, you still have to show up tomorrow, or basically sometimes all of what you've done in previous kind of doesn't mean nothing, which is as wild as and crazy as that to say. I think that's where we are. And that's why you just know that you're going to be here. You could put your faith in that. And then, Hedera is truly early. I will say that. Like, it really is. So I think we're all in a great position. And, man, you keep killing it with your shows because, you're relentless with it.
I appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Well, you take care. I'm going to move on and really appreciate you, man. All right. So let's unpack and get into this. Now, what is the most interesting next thing I want to talk about? I'm taking off the chit chat hat and now I'm going to put on the news hat here. 7 billion transactions. What does it mean? It turns out that the broader crypto ecosystem doesn't really care or understand about this metric. And I think that when we look at the article that we're talking about at the beginning of the show, one key insight from that I kind of wanted to just highlight and kind of pull into the rest of the show here is a a key pain point and criticism of the ecosystem that was highlighted in the article was a lack of public-facing leader. Now, this is very interesting because for a really long time, with the genesis of the public network, Dr. Lehman Baird was the public face of the network. You could liken him to, Ethereum guy, Cardano guy, Hedera guy. There was like a person, right? There was a face, there was a mascot. There were NFT projects that were created about Lehman. There was a lore, there was a culture, right? Then Lehman, that silly guy, he just started working on really important technical problems instead of being available for memes and goofs and gaffes. And I think that, when we go into the next story of kind of the next transaction milestone, it was Lehman who really was hyper focused on, we'll call it like the North Star KPI, being a key performance indicator. The one thing we were all looking to that would correlate with success of the network. At first, that was the amount of governing council members. That was what we looked to, basically to understand what the growth of the network was and how successful it was going to be. It was made clear by many people, including Brett, the chair of the governing council, and also Shane, the CEO of the HBAR Foundation, that you can't fill the governing council too quickly. You don't want it to fill up too quickly because in many of these types of organizations, more slots are added, articles are updated. It's a bad situation. It's more important to focus on onboarding governing council members, building use cases. So that dynamic changed. Then we shifted to transactions. We went, okay, now let's look at transactions. And we looked to transactions to really, again, be the key performance indicator of the success of the network. And it turns out that it's really important to us, right? It turns out that it really excites us and galvanizes the community together, but it's confusing and not important to the broader crypto ecosystem. And you could argue that, but you don't understand. It's real transactions and real value going through. It's not fake like Solana, blah, blah, blah. In my opinion, in branding and marketing is if you're in a position where you're, or I would say more like it, maybe in debating and stuff like that. If you're in a position where you're explaining yourself, you're not in a good position. You should be presenting something to the audience that makes sense, right? You should be presenting information that's easy to understand, that makes sense. And right now, Hedera is presenting information to the broader crypto ecosystem that doesn't make sense, that isn't tangible and isn't actionable. They don't understand what to do with it. And also, Hashgraph is a very disruptive technology. So there's also that element to everything. And it's really interesting to see that unfold because it was very exciting when we got to 5 billion transactions. It was very exciting when in January we saw this early step function from tens of transactions to hundreds of transactions. That was very exciting. It did nothing to price. It did nothing to broader sentiment in the crypto ecosystem. So that has been a very interesting thing to watch. So when I see Hedera celebrating 7 billion transactions, we just celebrated 6 billion transactions. And in about 2 weeks, probably on the last day of April, we'll be celebrating 8 billion transactions. And I think internally as a community, it is worth celebrating, but I don't know if it gives the impression that we need to be giving. I don't know if it's useful information to the broader crypto ecosystem. I don't know if Hedera is meeting the broader ecosystem where it's at. Again, that's one side. The other side is enterprise. That is what Hedera is focused on. Those are Hedera's core customers. But a lot of the infrastructure that those customers are using are built by the community. So I think that there's two things. And it's an analogy that I've used a lot in the past in this show, many, many, many times over the years. is there are two almost separate worlds. There's the Hedera Enterprise HBAR Foundation world. There is the community world. And not only are both of them starting to get closer together, which is really great because both worlds have different ideas of success, different goals, and different approaches. Not only are they getting closer together, which is really great, also they're becoming more dependent on each other. Initially, the community world was very dependent on Hedera, but more and more, the Hedera world is becoming more and more dependent on the community. And I think that's really healthy because the more dependent Hedera becomes, the more dependent Hedera is on this community world, the better. That means that we get closer to decentralization, we get further down the roadmap, and we start to see more growth and bridges built. And so just to wrap my thoughts on this, we'll move on to the next story. We talk about the first key performance indicator being how many governing council members do we have. We found out that that might not be the best way to look at success for the network. Okay. We've been looking at TPS and transaction counts as now the new KPI, key performance indicator of success and growth of the network. And we're learning that although that does well for this community, it is a bit of a bubble. It may not be the most effective. I think that a new internal KPI that we can look to that's a little more abstract is the dependency that Hedera, Enterprise, the governing council, the foundation, all those folks have on the community. The more dependent that they are on the community, the closer we get, I think, to where we want to be. So that's been a really interesting thing to watch. And we'll go into our next story here. Hashpack is teaming up with Upside Cooperative. Upside Cooperative is a really interesting Hedera use case. And I do believe that they interface with other networks as well, but they do leverage the technology on Hedera. And Hashpack, of course, needs no introduction. The wallet of the ecosystem, there are other wallets, but Hashpack is definitely making some waves. And these two have partnered. So Upside Co-op is a way for a Web3 project to leverage a cooperative to give a corporation the ability to own certain equity in a DAO or a community, and then also allow that community to effectively purchase securities in that project in a what's the word? Compliant manner. Or it's a way for a Web 2 company to expand into Web 3 again in a compliant way via cooperatives. And Hashpack is a great wallet. And their announcement is basically aiming to expand the Web3 technology reach to traditional brands and companies. This is a great onboarding for companies to leverage these different ways of building communities, giving value to those communities, but not being scared of not being compliant with or not being threatened legally or anything like that. This is, and this is, again, coming off the back of a white paper co-authored by KPMG and all this different type of stuff. So really, really groundbreaking stuff. And that's basically what they want to do. They've got a user-friendly dashboard for stakeholders, control panel for brands. There's a whole other different element of their technology stack as well. But the key thing here is, what are the specific use cases? And this is what I'm really interested in. I understand the platform. I understand the goal of the platform and kind of how it works. And I'm really interested to see some case studies now. Who is using this platform? Who's building on it? What are they doing with it? And how have they structured their setup? I'm really interested to read that. So if anyone's interested in that stuff, I think a next great thing to keep an eye out for is for case studies from Upside Cooperative. I think that's going to be really interesting. Our next story is involving IBM and some breadcrumbs. IBM is a governing council member. They have been for a very long time. They also have a product called IBM Blockchain that's going to be working with companies such as the car company Renault, IPWE, Farmer Connect, eProvidence, Golden State Foods, the Home Depot, recognizable brands. The question is, and the breadcrumbs are, where does Hedera come into play? And there's some great conversations, especially on the community subreddit, talking about this. And there's some key insights that I'll quickly talk about with everybody. So I want to, there's a lot to unpack with this use case. I encourage people to check it out. But essentially, IBM's blockchain product allows companies to leverage the power of DLT for their different use cases. It's a tech stack that makes these technologies more accessible. And are these technologies including Hedera? Let's dive into the conversation from the Reddit. So the person who posted this to the subreddit, perfectability_1190. I mean, they're a big user on the subreddit. Shout out to them. They're sharing the link to this from the website. And basically, people are discussing the potential uses of Hedera and comparing it to the kind of IBM blockchain product and highlighting that this market is evolving so much. And really the question comes up, is IBM using Hedera as a component of this stack? Does the IBM blockchain plug into, for example, HCS or some of these different products, or how closely is it built onto Hedera? Some folks are saying yes, it does. Other folks are citing a footnote that IBM blockchain uses Hyperledger Fabric, which is an open source project of the Linux Foundation. They're also questioning, how could it be integrated into IBM's blockchain product if it was? And also, what integrations does Hedera have with Hyperledger Fabric? There is documentation on the Hedera website as to how the Hedera network can be integrated with Hyperledger. And there are close ties between Hyperledger and Hedera through Dan O'Farron, who's a key figure in both projects. And so really, I think what I'm seeing in the community now, there isn't a ton of clarity, but we do have these breadcrumbs. We know that IBM is a Hedera Governing Council member. We also know that big corporations right now, with the state of this market, is they're not going to put all their eggs in one basket. They're probably going to work with different technologies and different networks. And IBM blockchain, it's not clear whether it's using Hedera directly or not. We still have to glean some more insights about that. It is clear that it's using Hyperledger Fabric, and it is clear that there are close ties between Hyperledger Fabric and Hedera, and that there are existing integrations with Hedera and Hyperledger Fabric. So there are plenty of breadcrumbs here. It is likely that IBM blockchain is leveraging Hedera in some capacity, but we need more information. This is a story that I think the community is going to be watching pretty closely. But those are some insights from that. There's really not a whole lot more to speculate on it. Excuse me, I still got a lingering cough after this cold. And I think that, again, we have to remember that these governing council members have a very high conviction in Hedera. It's often pointed to that Google isn't very public with their commitments to Hedera. They don't really talk a lot about Hedera. They don't feature Hedera a lot. Also, their term on the governing council is set to expire relatively soon, in the coming, I guess, maybe 7-8 months. I can't remember. They can renew, but there is a lot of anxiety about some of these folks on the governing council of like, are they building? Are they going to leave? Are they going to stay? Why aren't they talking about Hedera more, et cetera, et cetera? Well, we do know from Shane, CEO of the HBAR Foundation, that 80% of governing council members currently are building use cases. Some of them may take a long time to come out. We also know that Google is hosting or has hosted the most recent governing council meeting in person at their Google Cloud headquarters. So there is that conviction. Enterprise moves slow, but could IBM be starting to turn on this engine a little bit? Does it involve Hedera? We'll have to find out. More breadcrumbs leading us to community nodes in the form of HIP 690. So HIP means Hedera Improvement Proposal, and Hedera Improvement Proposals are the ways in which people like myself, with HIP 412 for NFT metadata standards, I was a co-author on that. I'm a regular guy, and I can help contribute to the network, and also major pieces of infrastructure can be contributed. And it's the pathway, it's the as decentralized as we can get pathway that's similar to other networks that allows new upgrades and ideas to make their way onto the Hashgraph in a visible way. And 690 is a HIP that outlines how to identify community nodes in the address book and related APIs. So the network, where it stands right now, doesn't have a way for applications and key infrastructure to differentiate between what is a community node and what is a governing council node. And so what this HIP does is it creates some new stuff. So, and I mean, just to be clear, this isn't a green light for community nodes. This doesn't mean like community nodes are a go. What this means is it's just a simple addition to the network to allow applications to determine whether a node is a community node or not. And the proposal called ownership type will be added to the node address object in the address book file with possible values: council 0 and community 1. The node address probuf definition will have a new property ownership type. The mirror node REST API will also expose this information. Backwards compatibility ensured by setting up the default ownership type value to council 0. Security implications, malicious node operators attempting to alter files will result in an ISS and be ignored by the network. So basically, this is just a simple addition to the network that'll allow the network to know if a node is a community node or not. It's backwards compatible. It's not indicative of whether we're going to see things added yet, but this is a step forward, and this is a very tangible step forward, a very visible step forward. It's the first big step that we've seen in a long time in regards to community nodes. You should be excited about it. It's awesome. But the question remains, how soon can we expect the implementation of this proposal to end up in the network? That's what really this comes down to. I think that the speed at which this makes it into the network will be an indicator as to the speed that we'll see community nodes brought from the roadmap to the network. Watch this, see what unfolds. These hips do not lie. Dovu, Dovu official, that's their Twitter name. We're not talking about the regular old Dovu, folks. We're talking about the official Dovu. They've done some really interesting things. Let's talk about it. So Dovu, if people don't know, they're an OG use case. They've been around literally forever in Hedera years. And they've been making moves. And they are a ESG refi use case. And they're growing quite substantially, and it's been great to watch. I've had their CTO, Matt, on the show in episodes past talking about a lot of things. I believe that episode is available on itsbrandond.com/HBAR if you want to go and listen to it. It's a really great one if you're interested in learning about the insides and out of Dovu. Quick note, too, they just launched on Bitrex, that exchange, so Dove token is available there now. But here's the key points. Dovu is revolutionizing carbon credit verification with their digital monitoring, reporting, and verification standards, so DMRV. MRV is a process to ensure accurate accounting of greenhouse gas emissions and mitigation actions. Again, remember, this is the carbon offset space. Currently, it's really an opaque market. You don't know what's going on. There's a lot of tomfoolery, shenanigans going on. And when you put it on a public ledger and you leverage a piece of infrastructure like the Guardian, using marketplaces and dApps like Dovu, you then get a fully transparent, audible, immutable record and basically unlock this multi-trillion-dollar market. It's exciting, but this is a big piece of that. This will streamline the carbon credit verification process, making it more accessible for all types of projects. The DMRV stuff is really about accelerating the amount of carbon that can end up in these marketplaces. It combines powerful AI tools with DMRV to simplify verification documentation, right? When you think about all of the different administrative tasks that have to happen, can those be automated by AI? It addresses the generic MRV gap, ensuring trustworthiness and consistency of carbon credits. That's what this is all about. And it integrates MRV standards into Dovu's onboarding process for user-friendly experience. It basically means that it's not like these farms and other folks that are sequestering carbon and stuff have to reinvent the wheel on their end. We don't want that. We want low friction, easy onboarding. So here's what they're saying. What's next? They want to integrate the generic MRV standard into their onboarding platform, again, for that seamless user-friendly experience. They want to provide interactive demos, step-by-step guides, and detailed documentation for users. They want to showcase successful real-world examples within the platform to help project owners learn best practices. Dovu wants to continue developing generic MRV standards to foster greater transparency and encourage small-scale projects, key there, right, to adopt the standard, reducing costs and timelines associated with conventional verification methods. We want to give access to smaller projects. If you go on the marketplace on the Dovu platform, there's lots of like mom and pop farms and all these different types of things. So that's what this is about. It's a big piece. There's a huge problem on the supply side, right? And we're going to talk about this with our next story. The next story is in regards to a marketplace partner that Dovu is teaming up with called Undo Carbon. Undo Carbon has been awarded a contract provided by Microsoft with its first carbon removal via enhanced weathering. So Microsoft coming into the fold is very interesting. On a recent episode of the show, I had VP of Ecosystem from the HBAR Foundation, Rob Allen, and he brought up an example to illustrate the issue with the supply side. There isn't enough carbon offset credits in the world for Microsoft to do what they need to do. There's an issue in the supply side. There isn't enough supply for what these markets need. And now with the stuff we were talking about just previously with Dovu and this, we're starting to see the supply side come alive. On that episode too, Rob was talking about Tollum Earth. That's basically going to be a rethink of DeFi. Imagine being able to make thousands or millions of dollars buying and selling these assets the same way you would on Saucer Swap, but saving the planet at the same time and establishing a whole new carbon offset market, refi market. These are very exciting prospects. And with these updates, we're seeing the very beginnings of that. And I mean, it's really nice to see the beginnings involving one of these kind of OG Hedera use cases like Dovu. So I think that's great. Shout out to Dovu. Awesome use case. Love the work that they're doing. There's been a ton of updates from them. And I think, we'll continue seeing more. But again, Microsoft, right, is stepping into the fold. We keep seeing their name pop up. They're partnered with a lot of Hedera projects, right? They're helping out a lot of Hedera projects. They're on the peripheral. They remind me of Mastercard, right? We've had a recent story. He was just listening previously, but I had the CEO of FSCO on the show. They moved from Mastercard's Provenance blockchain product that was sunsetted. They moved to Hedera. And he mentioned that the relationship between Hedera and Mastercard is improving. Rob also mentioned that from the HBAR Foundation. So Microsoft, Mastercard, why are they popping up so much constantly? What could it mean? Dare I say, governing council members? I'm just going to put it out there. I mean, this week is called Breadcrumbs are back on the menu. There's a new menu item, guys. Is Microsoft and Mastercard, are they new governing council members? I mean, heck, we saw the Hedera Twitter account accidentally follow Sony. I talked about that, why that's so important. What is going on? I mean, we got enough breadcrumbs for a whole loaf. Just taking a sip of my coffee here. MetaMask and a use case called Tomb. I'm going to call it Tomb. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Tuum. Tomb Technologies. So the article is titled A Sneak Peek at Tomb Tech's MetaMask Identity Snap and Hedera DIDs. What does it mean? Tomb Tech is developing decentralized identity service using MetaMask snaps. Order MetaMask snaps. Basically, they're these little kind of self-contained like apps or applets that can run inside of MetaMask and change the experience that people have with MetaMask and access other networks, use and leverage the Hedera network through a unique user experience within MetaMask. Really, really cool stuff. Their demo and overview of Snap's functionality and highlights in progress are in the article as well. You should check that out. Features include creating and receiving DIDs, right, decentralized identity, issuing and saving verifiable credentials, and generating verifiable presentations. And their next steps are adding Google Drive storage for verifiable credentials for syncing across devices, integrating with healthcare patient portal applications, and increasing access for mobile platforms. Their mission is to develop self-owned identities, blending online and physical reality. So this is really great. This is right in line with a lot of these use cases that we're talking about. Some of the other challenges in regards to bridging these gaps and bridging out to other networks involve MetaMask. And we've talked about potential snaps and leveraging the Hedera network. You know, there was a Hello MetaMask initiative that I was a part of in the Hedera ecosystem with the purpose of wanting to make Hedera one of the suggested networks in MetaMask, because there's a drop down in MetaMask where you can select the network you want to use, add Hedera to it, let people use Hedera in MetaMask without needing to manually type in information. So this in particular is one I think that's off people's radar a little bit, but it's so important because it's going to break open a whole new kind of area of use case, right? People leveraging the network with a Hedera use case inside MetaMask. It's very cool. And I'm curious to know if this is interfacing the Guardian at all. The Guardian is a technology stack that allows applications to leverage the Hedera network for these kind of refi use cases and different things like that. I don't know if this is specifically refi, but I know it's utilizing DIDs and VCs and different things. I don't know if it's leveraging it. I don't know if it needs the Guardian, but I'm just curious about that. That is what's on my mind. So, governing council, all that good stuff. They had a meeting, and we've got the meeting notes. Fun fact about the governing council meeting minutes is the documents are actually immutably tokenized on the Hedera network through the proven DB use case, the proven database use case. So fun fact is, you know, these meeting minutes can't be updated when they're published. They can't go back and change them. They're verified on the network via proven DB, which I thought was kind of cool. And I don't know if they're actually stored on the Hedera file service, but they may in fact be. So, meeting minutes. What's going on? Well, Coinman, the H Barbarian, shared a couple really interesting key insights from the meeting minutes. And I'll talk through the main ones here. So, some points of interest involve the membership committee report. So, Simon from Megaloo discussed the remaining council vacancies and the terms of the current council members. He shared that recently, council members have been discussing Hedera within their networks and educating prospective members about council membership, which has generated high-quality candidates. And what is a high-quality candidate for Hedera? They've identified that it is a candidate that is building on the network. So just reading in between the lines there a little bit. Also, if we look at the corporate utilization committee report, Andrew from DLA Piper, and DLA Piper has been one of the most highly in attendance members of the governing council for these meetings. Andy shared that CorpCom has been experiencing strong attendance from both council members and invited parties in the industry. At its last themed meeting, CorpCom hosted two organizations that presented innovative solutions in the ESG and sustainability space. So what that means is there are these people and organizations that aren't on the governing council member presenting and sharing use cases with the governing council privately. That's really cool. And could that be some of these folks that we're talking about? This next one is a conversation involving Rich Woodman from Google. Rich update, and this is the Legal and Regulatory Committee report. Rich updated the council that RegCom is seeking increased engagement and sophisticated discussions around regulatory issues and strategy. Recent discussions include the scope of RegCom's activities, which RegCom described in a proposed amendment to its charter. RegCom has also been discussing recent staking-as-a-service enforcement actions and related topics. The council then went into executive session, during which the council discussed RegCom's proposed amended charter, which included a name change from the Legal and Regulatory Committee to the Regulatory and Policy Committee. Interesting. The genesis of this change is RegCom's increased focus on proactive efforts to shape the global regulatory landscape. Okay? The genesis of this change is RegCom's increased focus on proactive efforts to shape the global regulatory landscape. This is Hedera and their mission to be a part of the larger conversations in regards to the global regulatory landscape, giving this community and the crypto community a seat at the table. Big stuff. Another thing from the governing council meeting is, and I think, this is an important one. This is a really important one. Marketing committee proposal from Christian Hasker at Swirls Labs, aka Chasker on Twitter. Christian discussed a proposal to reactivate the marketing committee. Now, when I read that, I was kind of shocked because, there's no marketing committee. There hasn't been a marketing committee in the governing council since it was dissolved May last year. There hasn't been a marketing committee in the governing council for a year. Dissolved May 2021. 2 years. Now, this is what's really interesting, is we talked at the top of the show about difficulties that Hedera has and the ecosystem has breaking out of the bubble, and also, expanding to other networks, getting attention, bringing people in. How can they effectively do that without a marketing committee? So again, Christian wants to reactivate the marketing committee. A newly revived marketing committee would provide oversight and advice to the council on marketing programs. Is this part of the issue, right? Is part of the problem that we're talking about, is it due to the fact that the Hedera Governing Council doesn't have a marketing committee? Very well could be. Christian informed the council members that marketing committee is seeking representation from marketing teams within council member organizations, several of which have already been confirmed. Hedera staff will call for nominations for marketing committee co-chairs, and the council is expected to vote on whether it will revive the marketing committee at an upcoming council meeting. I think that they should not wait, and they should get this thing back online. It sounds like they already have confirmed interest from marketing representation from governing council member organizations, aka Google, aka DLA Piper, aka Aberdeen, aka Ubisoft, whatever, all those guys. So, and not those ones specifically. I'm giving you an example. Get it online, get it going. What are we waiting for? We haven't had a marketing committee for 2 years. Let's go. It'll probably solve some problems. What are we doing? Coupons, let's switch gears here. So coupons, what are going on with coupons? I talk about coupons a lot, and I'm still talking about them. What's taking them so long, and what's new? Let's find out. AI 8112 coupons are fun and cool because they stop fraud in the coupon industry. When you use and spend coupons, they have to get sent down to Mexico in bags and counted by hand. There's all sorts of different fraud at the checkout. Retailers and brands have to keep all sorts of different money slushing around that they can't use to remit and pay people, and it's a nightmare. And also the experience for users isn't that great. Well, good thing there's this new technology called Hedera Hashgraph that can help with this. Now, excuse me, my goodness. What exactly is going on with coupons? I mean, it's been years. We don't exactly know what's happening. We're expecting lots of transactions from this. We're expecting lots of excitement from this. And we haven't really seen that happen. It turns out that really what it's about is not the brands so much. They're really excited about this, offering their customers a better experience and using a truly standardized global coupon standard, which means that they don't have to do work with stores directly to give customer experiences. For example, if they want to change a coupon program, they don't have to work with those chains. Those stores will be using the same standard that the brands are. So the brand can have fun and change all the settings about their campaigns and try out new things and all these different things. And the retailers don't have to do anything. They don't have to take on that hard work. But the problem is when it comes to new technology, retail and some of these other companies and industries are slow to move. So that's what we're waiting on. So what's new? Food Depot. The Food Depot is a well-known grocery store. Not to me, maybe because I'm in Canada. They're adopting the AI 8112 standard. Now, it also is worth noting that it's not like nobody's using this, right? It is being trialed in various mom and pop stores. It's also being rolled out to major retailers, which are taking time to onboard. So it is working, it is happening, and it also is an industry standard, which means that it will continue and will be adopted, and the old standard 8110 will be sunsetted and no longer used. So it's unique. It's not like a situation of if that's going to happen. It's just when it's going to happen. But anyways, sorry. Food Depot, they're adopting the standard. They're enabling customers to access Procter & Gamble coupons. Procter & Gamble is one of the largest products providers out there. If you look at maybe some of your shampoos, food products, whatever, they are massive. And when it comes to coupons, they're a beast. And so this grocery store is going to allow Procter & Gamble to leverage this power, give them a taste, hopefully start the ball rolling. The benefits, of course, heightened security, increased efficiency, expanded accessibility. There's a lot of discussion around this, and I want to just quickly highlight a few key points in regards to discussion from the community on this news. People are speculating about the transactions that this is going to drive and when the Coupon Bureau use case is fully adopted, right? The 8112 standard is from the Coupon Bureau. Actually, on the last episode of the show, you should go listen to it. It's brandond.com/HBAR. We actually had .com/HBAR. We had some news from the Coupon Bureau that you should listen to if you're curious about this. Also in the community conversation, some people are mentioning 3 transactions for each coupon: issuance, clipping, and redemption. And let me pull up a statistic from my notes from last week's episode, because I have a exciting statistic. Or was it last episode? No, maybe it was an even earlier episode. I'm going to go back even earlier into my notes. I'm going back to episode 70 here. Here's a great statistic. I've got it pulled up here. The Coupon Bureau distributed 158 billion coupons last year. Each coupon may need up to 3 transactions. So again, we're not talking about necessarily 600 billion transactions. Maybe we are. I don't know. But those are some numbers. Also, too, questions remain about how transactions will be counted for digital coupons. So we don't exactly know how the business logic on the Coupon Bureau's end is going to work. Are these transactions potentially going to be bundled? Who knows? We'll have to find out. Those are the questions on top of the community's mind. That's what's new with coupons. Let's move on. FIDO Alliance. The FIDO Alliance is a really interesting story that's come out. The FIDO Alliance is an alliance that is charged with some new identity standards and bringing together a lot of major corporations, pretty much all the major ones, including Apple, Google, Facebook, PayPal, Microsoft, Mastercard, Visa, Bank of America, etc. And these are kind of the new standards, and these are the things that they want to have happen. And they've announced Hedera as a sponsor member of the FIDO Alliance. So that's exciting, but there's a little more to this. So there's a few mixed feelings about the potential impact of this partnership. I mean, it's not like folks are saying this is bad or this is good. Again, when we look at the crypto community, sometimes big companies teaming together to come up to do something freaks some people out. You can look at the governing council as something similar to that. We've seen some of the feedback on that. But there are some really great things about this. This can really strengthen Hedera's positioning in various industries, because a lot of the people involved with the FIDO Alliance, such as Apple, Microsoft, Bank of America, Visa, those different folks, they are really the consumers of this. They need these things for their customers and their products and their networks. And they are obviously going to contribute to these standards. But Hedera is really uniquely positioned because they can provide some of the technology to make this stuff happen and potentially provide some new perspectives to look at this through, right? The other thing to this is what I wanted to wrap up this story on, because I mean that's really the news here is FIDO Alliance is announcing Hedera as a sponsored member. Great, big news, fantastic. But what more can we pull from this? And there's something really interesting here. If folks know about Brett McDowell is currently at Hedera. He's the chair of the board, and he basically is the representative of the governing council. You could say he represents Hedera, basically. He's on the pulse. And I want to read you an excerpt from an article published by the FIDO Alliance in 2019. And I really want to emphasize here, right? We're talking about the FIDO Alliance. You heard the companies that I mentioned. You heard what I was, outlining what they're doing, all these different types of things. And I want to read this article from their blog in 2019, an excerpt. Quote, the title of this article is "With Progress Comes Change for FIDO Alliance in 2019." Quote, all of this growth has been led by members on our board of directors in conjunction with our founding executive director, Brett McDowell, the same Brett McDowell that's currently at the tippy tip top of Hedera. Over the past 7 years, Brett has grown an excellent team to address the industry. With this growth comes change. As the Alliance enters this exciting next chapter, Brett McDowell is taking on added professional projects in the industry in addition to his role as FIDO Alliance Executive Director. Specifically, he will be leveraging his deep experience managing multi-stakeholder industry bodies to advise the Hedera Hashgraph Governing Council as its executive director. The Alliance is grateful for his ongoing service and for the work he's done to bring the organization to this point. So, in short, this is not just an announcement of Hedera being a sponsored member. From what I just read, there's more to this. There's a bigger story that's been unfolding. And Brett seems to be a bit of a legend. I'm not going to lie. Parabolic HBAR on Twitter. Again, we talked about his article at the top of the show. He's been really gangbusters in regards to Breadcrumbs recently. He wanted to share something from another Hedera community member, Lemonade, in a Discord that was referencing certain patents from the FIDO Alliance that contain references to Hashgraph. So there are patents that reference both FIDO and Hashgraph, and I'll read a quick excerpt from one of these patents. The distributed database system 100 can be used for many purposes, such as, for example, storing attributes associated with various users in a distributed identity system. For example, such system can use the user's identity as the key and the list of attributes associated with the users as the value. In some instances, the identity can be a cryptographic public key and corresponding private key known to that user. So these are the core principles. Like Apple talked about this in their recent keynote. I think it was at the beginning of the year or maybe last year. I can't remember. But Apple announced that they were adopting these FIDO standards. Apple announced, Tim Cook said these words almost verbatim, that they were going to be leveraging cryptographic public keys and private keys to eliminate the need for passwords for logging into their products. So this stuff is happening and it's big. And not only is Hedera in the middle of it, but there's so much more under the surface. So just wanted to highlight that. Big stuff. We're almost through it here, folks. A couple more stories. One involving AI. A quick mention. It's very cool. If folks don't know, Gitbook is a product that a lot of companies and projects leverage to organize documentation information for developers to look up. Gitbook added the ability to integrate AI into these, so you can basically talk to libraries of documentation, and Hedera has enabled this feature. So if you're a developer and you're looking to do things on the network, you can now effectively talk to and have a conversation with the Hedera documentation. Very cool, very neat. Hardware wallets and what is going on with Ledger. So I know that we're now at the time, if people have listened to previous episodes, I had the CTO of Hashpack on the show about 2 months ago. I had Tyler on the show. We were talking about Ledger, and it was outlined that by now, Ledger would have Hedera integrated. Of course, we can use Ledger with Hashpack for our HBAR only, and we don't have full staking support yet. So we've been waiting, and I think that Ledger might be getting its lunch eaten. Not only do we have a new Hedera specific hardware wallet coming to the ecosystem, Citadel Wallet, that I also had as a guest on the show previously. Again, you can listen to that episode on my website. But we also have Descent Wallet. I don't know if it's Decent Wallet, Descent Wallet. I'm just going to say Descent Wallet. I might be incorrect. Let me know if I'm being a dummy, a decent dummy. So what is this news? Well, what's happening with Descent Wallet is they are a leading blockchain hardware wallet in Korea, and they're integrating with the Hedera token service to enable developers, institutions, and retail users to interact with the network. So the HTS has been seen, the Hedera token service has seen rapid growth, focusing on the launch of DeFi through DEXs and NFT marketplaces. It's imperative that HTS assets, right? We're talking about not just HBAR, but also all these other coins like Sauce and Dovu, and also NFTs. It's important that they're protected by hardware wallets, storing those things in a hardware wallet. Integrating the full suite of HTS services into Descent Wallet, Hedera users can now interact with the network with maximum security. So again, this wallet, unlike Ledger, will be able to process more types of transactions, maybe staking transactions, but also NFT transfer transactions, all those different types of things. This is a hardware wallet that you'll be able to use for your NFTs on Hedera. They're the biggest wallet in Korea with 200,000 monthly active users across 220 countries. And the HBAR Foundation supports this. So they have support from the HBAR Foundation. So this is definitely a subsidized effort, but it needs to happen. And that's the news on this. Ledger is falling behind when it comes to market share in the Hedera ecosystem specifically. It is a small market, but I think it's going to grow. Now, there are some other questions around this, but I mean, you know, we can dive into that. I think a key question to this, in my mind, is if staking transactions are enabled for these hardware wallets, does that mean we're going to see a drastic increase in TVL on the network? And if Ledger adds these ability to stake on the network, are we going to see that? Because I feel there's a lot of HBAR stored in hardware wallets that isn't able to be used for staking. And this is HBAR that's probably locked down. It might be a wallet that holds tens of millions of HBAR. And when staking is announced, I feel like, sorry, not staking is announced, but when support for staking is brought to Ledger and also these other hardware wallets, are we going to see a sharp increase in the amount of TVL on the network because all of a sudden these holders, these whales, are going to be able to stake their HBAR? That's going to be interesting to watch. That's just something on my mind as I follow this story. Saucer Swap, $150 million total volume. Congrats, big achievement, amazing. I think that these are the types of metrics that make sense to the broader crypto ecosystem. Now, $150 million total volume on a DEX when you compare it to Spooky Swap or Pancake Swap or Sushi Swap or whatever on other networks or Uniswap, it's very small. But it's something that people understand. And when you look at the growth and extrapolate on that, it potentially becomes appealing to people. So these are the kinds of stats that are exciting. Let's get this out there. And also, last little item, not even really a story, but just worth mentioning, Hedera is sponsoring Consensus. So Consensus is a giant conference happening April 26th to 28th in Austin, Texas, which is Hedera's backyard. Hedera's in Dallas. And that's it. Hedera's sponsoring it. And I think that this makes certain things happen. We have CoinDesk publishing an article talking about the fact that Hedera is sponsoring Consensus. And those types of things get attention. Those types of things get excitement. So I wanted to highlight it. That's something that people should share. These are the things that make these connections in the ecosystem happen. And, you know, I'm trying to see if we missed anything, but I think we got all these stories. I think we got through it. Did I miss anything from my notes? Let me see here. We talked about everything. I mean, one last thing I'll talk about is the HBAR Bull, the other Brandon in the ecosystem that does incredible weekly videos that you should check out. He publishes them on Friday, I believe, or maybe Saturday. Check them out. There's a segment in those videos featuring Rob Allen from the HBAR Foundation called Shark Bites. Rob is also a shark photographer. And from this week's episode, there's a few insights that I got from that video that was interesting. Rob was talking about the NFT space and some different things like that, some things that he doesn't usually talk about. Rob explained that there's two exciting Hedera use cases, and he references, you know, the Coupon Bureau, of course, and he also references Karate Combat. He says these are great proof of concepts for big enterprises. I have to agree with that. I think that these are examples we should champion. Rob also believes that IoT, right, Internet of Things, is an underdeveloped part of the network, and mentions several use cases like Neuron and drones. Neuron is a very fascinating use case in regards to managing air traffic tracking to avoid drones from crashing into each other and creating a whole new economy and allowing, you know, Amazon to deliver things by drone. That's a great use case. He also says micropayments are a valuable capability that have not been fully exploited yet. He also emphasizes that Hedera's core utility as a trust layer allows for value to flow like electricity, data, or water, and enables the theoretical things that can be built on top of it. He's also convinced that Hedera is on the right track with its enterprise use cases. He's excited about the possibilities for consumer engagement and the second favorite use cases like rewards points, coupons, and vouchers and those different types of things. So Rob is someone to listen to. I find him to be a lot more open than a lot of other folks at the foundation. And he has a payments background. So it's also very interesting because he does understand the value of DeFi, but he also bends those viewpoints in the direction of enterprise. So when we talk about changing our view on the broader crypto space, Rob does a really great job of taking things that are happening in the crypto space and recontextualizing them for things that can happen on Hedera. So it's very interesting stuff. And when we look at those types of things and we look at what we talked about, it all comes down to this. Another week behind us and another week ahead. And a huge shout out to everyone listening live on the Twitter Spaces right now. And an extra shout out to everyone listening to the recording on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you may find yourself. If you have a moment, give the show a rating and review on your favorite platform. It helps a lot. My final thoughts, and real quick, I mean, huge thank you to King Solomon for stopping by. Always a pleasure to talk with him. I mean, he's a very busy guy. Great to have a half hour of his time. Very kind words for the show. It's been a wild ride for the show. I mean, again, like I said, I started the show October 2021. I had about 5 listeners. Like, if you listen to what I'm doing right now, I would be doing this for 5 people listening the whole time. No recordings. There was no recordings of the show. It was on Clubhouse. Twitter Spaces didn't exist. And here we are. That's what consistency does. That's what this is about. It's about showing up, staying consistent. And like I said, I do this for me so I can keep up with the news, hold myself accountable. I'm an HBAR investor. I invest in other projects on the network. I love it. I'm a technology enthusiast. I'm a Hashgraph enthusiast. Why not? This show forces me to stay up to date. And it just so happens, I think people really enjoy it. I had 5 people listening back in 2021, and now some shows get thousands of listeners. So it's just incredible to see the growth. I think it'll go even further. And that's also kind of where we're at with the Hedera ecosystem and what we were talking about. I want to bring this back to the beginning of the show. Ecosystem pain points, right? That article that Parabolic HBAR wrote. The pain points in the ecosystem are inefficient community outreach, inadequate tooling, slow retail market growth, suboptimal marketing efforts, lack of a public-facing leader, limited community initiatives, misallocated funding, and insufficient supports for key decentralized applications. There are things that need to change, but I do think things are changing. And I think that it's so important to focus on the little things. I know we need to think big, but we also need to think small. It's a bear market, and Hedera is not a projectile. Hedera is a engine-powered aircraft. It's not and I'm referencing Paul Graham right now. If people know who Paul Graham is, shout out to you guys. Hedera isn't a projectile. What I mean by that is Hedera isn't something that we need to shoot off out into the air with a huge amount of momentum to see how far it can go. To me, it appears that Hedera is an aircraft that isn't fully built yet. It's still in beta. It's not running perfectly yet. Sometimes the engines go out, and it's not flying in maybe the exact right direction. And there's a lot of other crappy airplanes out there that are up in the air right now. And we're in a bear market. And this is a very small ecosystem. And I'm not saying that Hedera is crappy. What I'm saying is that there's obviously a lot of room for improvement. It's in beta, for God's sakes. It's not even done yet. And the name of the game right now is literally just to stay alive. That's 95% of the game of the focus right now, is for Hedera to stay alive. And to reference Paul Graham again, the technology industry train leaves on regular intervals. Okay? And that was from an essay that Paul Graham wrote years and years and years and years ago. Look at what's happening right now. AI, DLTs, crypto. The technology train is about to leave the station. And with everybody freaking out and running around, Hedera may just find themselves on the technology train in a car all to themselves. Only if they stay alive, because the air is thin and we don't know how long this bear market's going to last. And the other thing too is I find that a lot of projects in the Hedera ecosystem make a really problematic mistake. And I think that Hedera does a good job of avoiding this mistake. And people love to bring up Amazon and Jeff Bezos and stuff like that when they talk about Hedera. Jeff Bezos is really famous for something. When Amazon was in its really early days, I don't even think it was the turn of the millennium yet. I think it was still the 90s. Barnes & Noble started an online bookstore. And Barnes & Noble was a multi-billion-dollar company, and Amazon was still a very small startup. And Amazon, the company, was very scared because they just started to see major competition, a big threat. And so what Jeff Bezos said to the company, to Amazon, he said, don't be scared of competition. Now is the time when we need to be terrified of our customers. Our customers are what is going to bring us success. And by focusing on the competition, we're going to lose customers. By focusing on our customers, we're going to keep them. And when I look at Hedera, I look at something that they're doing really well. Who is Hedera's customer? Enterprise, right? Hedera is not worried right now about their competition, aka Solana, aka these other networks, which you could argue is their competition. To me, Hedera seems terrified of their customer. They seem terrified of enterprise that is using their network. I like that. It also could explain why there's a lack of focus on some of the other things we've talked about and some of these pain points. Could there be too much focus on that? And also, could Hedera be missing another set of customers? Us, Saucer Swap, Hashpack, Dovu, community projects. Let me just do something real quick here. We got time. People are still listening. We have no more news. So if you have to get to dinner or do something, the recording will be available on all major podcast platforms. But I can't just start rattling off use cases and not mention more people, because it's really important. I want to see if I can find community projects. Saucer Swap, Hashport, Pangolin, Zeus Market, HeliSwap, Stater, Hashgraph Name, Web23, Galaxy, Headstarter, Dovu, EarthID, GoMint, HashAxis, Taskbar, TuneFM, Timelez, Acme Labs, Aeon, Cloud.art, Creamylands, Dropper. I'm literally just reading the Hedera use case website. Hashpack, Blade, Ledger, Venly, Fireblocks. What else is going on? Hashscan, Hgraph.io, Archaea, Dragonglass, Acor, all these other ones like LedgerWorks, all these other ones. These are also Hedera's customers. Hedera needs to be terrified of these people. They have the right idea. They're taking that advice that's very sage wisdom from Jeff Bezos, and probably other executives have said these things to survive these types of situations that Hedera finds themselves in. Enterprise is Hedera's customers. Hedera should not be concerned with other networks. Hedera should be concerned with their customers and focused on those customers. We're their customers too. These people that I just listed are their customers as well. And what do these customers need? They need what was talked about in the article from Parabolic HBAR. They need to have extra focus put on the pain points of insufficient community outreach, inadequate tooling, slow retail market growth, suboptimal marketing efforts, lack of a public-facing leader, limited community initiatives, misallocated funding, insufficient support for key decentralized applications. These are not things I'm pulling out of my ass. These are things that were in the article that I've been told directly from people in the ecosystem, and these are things told to me from Hedera's customers. So I don't think it's a situation where Hedera is doing the wrong thing. Hedera is just forgetting about a bunch of customers, and they need to be a little more scared of the people that I just mentioned, right? That's what it is. When I talk about Saucer Swap should be right alongside Avery Dennison. When I talk about Hashpack should be right up alongside Boeing. When I talk about Zeus Market, they should be right up alongside DLA Piper. And you know why? Here's why. When community nodes are added, and hypothetically, Hashpack, Saucer Swap, Stater, other use cases like this have a community node that the community can stake to, I think it's going to be so much HBAR that is moved from governing council nodes to community nodes, it will make the governing council's heads spin. It's going to shock the market, I think, to see the brand power that folks, again, let me see here. Tune FM, Dovu, HeliSwap, Pangolin, Saucer Swap, Hashport. It's going to shock people to see the brand power that those use cases have. And when use cases like those start a community node and you're looking in your wallet at the list of community nodes and how much HBAR is staked to each node, I'm pretty certain that you will see more HBAR staked to a community node that is a project with no more than 10 employees that can barely pay their rent versus a governing council node. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to shock the market. And I think that that's the reason why these community dApps are legitimate customers that Hedera needs to be terrified of in a bear market, the same way that they're terrified of enterprise. And they need to address it. And I think that I agree with the points raised in the article. I think there are many ways to look at it, but I just think that if you want to look at solutions, right? If you want to look at getting this plane steered a little more in the right direction and keep it up in the air a little better through this bear market, so it's still in the air when things are going well and it hasn't crashed into the side of the mountain like other things that we've seen, it's time to start merging these worlds together and start thinking about some of these enterprise customers in the same way that we think about some of these community projects. That's what I think. Thanks for tuning in to Hashgraph Enthusiast News and Rumors, episode 72. Breadcrumbs are back on the menu. Broadcast live on Twitter Spaces every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and made available on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts, every Monday. Get all the info you need about the show and listen to past episodes at itsbrandond.com/HBAR. Make sure to join the Hashgraph Enthusiasts Twitter community to share your insights, ask questions, and invite new friends. We just passed 800 members. If you'd like to become a supporter of the show, feel free to send an HBAR donation to enthusiast.hbar using your Hedera wallet. There is a tweet pinned to the top of my profile on Twitter where I'm talking about, supporting the show, donating to the show. I'll actually just quickly pin that to the top of the spaces here as well. Check it out. Anything helps. I mean, I do have people reaching out wanting to sponsor or different things like that. I don't like it. I want to give the kind of like brought to you by viewers like you approach. I think it's cooler. So if you want to support the show, feel free. I appreciate everyone tuning in, and I'll see you live on Twitter Spaces next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Now, for everyone listening now, if you see somebody listening as you scroll down that you don't recognize, hit their PFP, send them a DM, and make a connection. You already have something in common. You're sitting here and you've been listening to me for 2 hours. So you obviously, both of you have a lot of patience and are able to absorb a lot of information. And you both are Hashgraph enthusiasts maybe. So reach out if you see someone you don't recognize. If you see someone you recognize that are listening, and maybe you haven't reached out in a while, send them a DM. That's what I've been doing recently. I've been catching up with people. Stay in touch. You never know what somebody is doing that's new. You won't know if they've discovered something interesting. Stay in touch with people. Do that. And with that, hello future, goodbye past. I'm going to leave the spaces open for a couple more moments. Connect everybody. Take care. Thank you so much for tuning in.